I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Shirley, we got roll call.
I have taken roll. Everybody is here but Kathy Barger, and you do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Next item is consent agenda approval of the February 12th, 24 meeting. Anybody have any issues or comments?
Nope.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, that carries. Next item is new business. Discussion item, backyard chickens / hens.
Yeah, I left that under new business, but I probably could have moved it down to old business. I'm sorry to do that. This is brought to you tonight. There was a previous motion at a previous meeting before last month, and Kent made the motion to bring the issue back up for discussion when we had a full board. Brought it last month thinking we might have a full board, and we didn't. We ended up just having a quorum, so we had 4 people here. I know at the last meeting, Shannon recommended that we hold an official public hearing at this month's meeting, but because Kent's original motion about having a full board to discuss hadn't really happened yet, I didn't post for a public meeting this time. Instead, leave it on as a discussion item. Ask the commission if there is some alternate language to the proposed ordinance that the board denied it middle of last year. Provide some changes, and then we will get those in before we do hold an official public hearing. So that's kind of my staff comments. I think you understand the issue. Possibility of backyard chickens ordinance that was presented middle of last year was denied by the Planning and Zoning Commission, or at least not recommended for approval by the board. Went to the Board of Aldermen. They had some discussion, but then remanded back to the Planning and Zoning Commission to give the P&Z an opportunity to make some changes and come up with, if there was desire to have an ordinance that they could recommend approval on.
And that code amendment you're talking about is section 405, 180. That's page 2.
Yes, right. So in the back of your packet, there's a staff report from
And that's the same one that was from July.
July. I think actually the language might be in there 2 different times. One at the very end of the packet, and then the same language was attached to maybe a memo from a meeting or 2 ago, I believe. Yes, a page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, page 7 of the agenda.
How many half-acre lots, residential lots, do we have in the city?
We have
Or larger?
We were counting some of those on Friday. I was going to get that in the packet. I'm sorry, on Thursday afternoon. Couldn't get that information into the packet because I was with a sick kid. And then also today. But we had gotten up to, it was definitely in the 10s. So like higher 10s, like we were counting up into 60 lots. If you took all this, so all of Paddock Drive, in the subdivisions, we would have a handful of them in all of the subdivisions, primarily in cul-de-sac lots. And then if there were some lots that might have been on a curve, the outside of the curve would include some lots that were big enough.
How many residential lots in the city total?
Of all the single-family residential lots that have a single-family house on them, not necessarily just zoning.
How many of those lots do we have?
Well, we have about 3,330 single-family homes. I would say be less than 10% are going to be that half-acre size. Might be close to the 5%.
Okay.
1.6. If it's 60, and we have 3330, that's 1.6%.
Oh, 330
3,330.
would be 10, 175
You
would
said
be
there
about
was
5%.
60 lots?
We didn't get through all of, we didn't count half the town. We
Okay.
counted about a third of the town to a half.
So probably about 3 or 4% of the population.
At most.
And, okay. I have issues with it, 2 of them. First off, that. I believe that if you're gonna allow them, I don't know that you should have an acreage restriction. If they can meet the setbacks, they should be able to have them. Because I don't know why the guy on the ridge of the cul-de-sac, it doesn't seem right that the guy that's on the cul-de-sac that's got a half acre and the guy that's got 2/3 of an acre or a third of an acre, who's right next door to him, can't have chickens. That seems kind of silly to me. When you've got setback restrictions, if they can make that setback restriction, I think they should be able to have the chickens. Also, 3 chickens is almost pointless. The expense to get up 3 chickens, it's three chickens won't sustain a family of 4. I think most ordinances have a 6 in neighboring towns, or most towns that have them. If they have a low end, it's 6, which I believe is the number that you need to sustain a family of 4. Those are my 2 issues with the proposed ordinance.
So I don't want to step on.
I'm done.
If you're done, okay. So I'm going to echo exactly what you said and maybe a little bit more. I just have some questions for staff. How many dogs can you have in Kearney? 3? Is that limited to any size dog? No size restrictions?
Doesn't matter what
So I
size,
can have
yeah, just
3
number.
5-pound Yorkies or 3 150-pound Great Danes?
Mhm.
Okay. How much waste does a Great Dane make?
A lot.
A lot more than a chicken. All right. So I know that there were some comments from council and maybe previous discussions about screening. Screening of what? They didn't really say. They talked
Screening
about
of the, I believe the enclosure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we have to screen dog houses in Kearney?
No.
Do we have to screen a dog run in Kearney?
No.
Is there any other accessory structure we have to screen?
I think so.
It doesn't seem a little distinction without a difference to screen a chicken coop and not a dog house or a dog run.
Are you asking?
Yeah.
I would say it's almost rhetorical because it was a Board of Aldermen discussion where they brought that up.
Yeah, I'm just getting my opinion out there on the record. Is there setback requirements for dog runs or dog houses? If I have a dog house in my yard, do I need a setback?
We have a standard accessory structure, 10 feet from the rear, 8 feet from the side property line,
For a dog house?
but it'd be an accessory building,
Okay.
like a shed.
Is the current, as it's written today, a dog run or house could be 10 feet, is that what you're saying?
8 from the side.
8 from the
8 from the
side,
side, 10 from the rear.
10 from the rear? With the chicken coop, it has to be 20,
As
it's written?
As it was proposed, as that code amendment was proposed.
Is there any size restrictions on the lot for dog ownership?
No?
No, so I can have 3 Great Danes on a 1/10 of an acre,
Sure.
but as written, I can only have 3 chickens on a half acre.
As proposed in the ordinance.
I know some other comments were maybe the noise of a chicken. Does anybody know how loud a chicken is?
Not very.
It's 60 to 70 decibels, which is about the same level as this conversation, a human conversation. The dog bark is 80 to 90, and that's just kind of average. Some of them get up to 120. So dogs are significantly louder, produce significantly more waste, and we have less restriction on dogs. So along, with fellow board member here, I have an issue with the half acre, and I have an issue with the 3. the half acre, basically with the half acre, we're allowing chickens, but regulating them out of existence. So if we're going to limit it to half acre, we're down to, say, on the high end, 3% of the city can have it. Why are we even going through the exercise if we're eliminating most of them? So I have an issue with that. 3, doesn't sustain a family of 4. So just to do some quick research, for a family of 4 looking to have a steady supply, you need a small flock of 4 to 6 at minimum. Chickens lay 200 to 300 eggs per year, but that's not steady. So it's not one a day. So if you really want to sustain a family of 4, which, my family eats a lot of eggs. I got a daughter that's vegetarian, so she eats, well, pescatarian or whatever. She eats the eggs. No meat, but, so we eat a lot of eggs. So I don't know that 3 chickens is sustainable. So I have an issue with that. And then again, getting back to that half acre, if I can meet the 20-foot setbacks, and I only have a quarter acre, so it seems, again, splitting hairs, that if just because I have a half acre, I can still put it 20 feet from my neighbor's yard, or if I have a quarter acre, it's still 20 feet from neighbor's, same impact, no difference. If I have 20 acres, I can still put it 20 feet from my neighbor's property line. So again, we're drawing a line in the sand that for no real gain, in my opinion. So, and then the space required for chickens, so doing some quick research today. The standard breed chicken, they say 4 square feet of a coop space per chicken, 8 square feet per chicken for run space. If you start looking at larger breed chickens, you kind of bump that up to 8 square feet for the coop and 15 square feet for the run. That's easily met on a standard size residential lot. So there's a lot of safeguards in this ordinance that I like. They have to get a permit, they have to come in yearly, they have to test that they're meeting all the requirements. We got to give our citizens the benefit of the doubt that they're going to meet it until they don't, right? A cop doesn't pull you over because you may or may not be speeding. He pulls you over when you do speed. So I'd say, giving them, our citizens, the benefit of the doubt and allowing them the chickens that they want until they don't follow the ordinance, and then we have means of regress or means to address that. Do we have staff to enforce this?
We have an animal control.
We got to
Mm-hmm.
over this. Okay. Well, that's my quick soapbox on that. So that's where I stand.
I have a little trouble comparing dogs and cats to chickens. It just, to me, that's apples and oranges. Dogs are domestic animals, have been for hundreds of years, and although some people will let the chickens in their house, I've seen that. So, but I'm just having a little trouble grasping the fact that.
So can I ask, you might ask conversation questions from a land use perspective? How is it different? An animal's an animal, right? Just because you pet and name your dogs, they still urinate, defecate, and tear up your yard, just the same as chickens out there doing the same thing. But I would say that less impact than a big dog. I got a 100-pound lab that tears everything up. I got a 50-pound mutt that just digs everything up. And that's
then maybe we should start controlling the dogs.
right. They're not causing a nuisance though, so I don't see the difference between, I'm not going to put a chicken on my lap and pet it, and it's not going to snuggle in the bed with me. But from a land use perspective, the impact and the impact is negligible between the two. The intensity of the uses are the same. We have nuisance ordinances and nuisance laws in the city to address any build up of fecal matter, any nuisance situations. There's safeguards in here. So I'm comfortable with this.
I will echo your point exactly, Chaston, and I will say that you are comparing domesticated dogs and pets to livestock. And that's just a fact. Nobody has ever said, let's go and get a pet chicken. And that's,
So I would,
I would say that's a
so you
broad
have, you know
statement.
people that have pet chickens in town.
My aunt.
I don't know of any.
I know,
The only time, I'm sorry, the only place I've ever seen a pet chicken is on Green Acres.
I know,
And so,
I do know someone who had, their chickens are definitely pets. And in fact, at one point, there was one of those chickens that was being picked on by the other chickens. And she moved it up to the house, gave it its own little coop
Well-
under the deck, and her name was Big Mama. And Big Mama was a friendly pet chicken.
it's still, in today's world, one is a domesticated pet and the other is livestock.
I understand what they're classified as.
Okay, well,
But-
that's what we're talking about, is classifications here.
And I would say that as a rule, the
beg to
people
You,
that do
the
backyard
ordinance
chickens,
says no livestock now, as it
Okay.
is. And a chicken is livestock,
it's, right?
so.
The ordinance
The
also
dog
said,
doesn't lay eggs. You don't eat the dog. It doesn't provide any food.
so I would say it has
Chicken
less,
does.
So
but I would
All
say it
life
has less
protection.
value.
They provide protection.
Yeah, I guess in that line of thinking, we're not allowed to, you're saying you don't want chickens because they produce food and lay eggs.
I'm just comparing, you're comparing the two, and I'm telling you, here's the difference.
And I'm saying we shouldn't compare the two based on the classification of the type of animal. We should base it on a land use
All right.
decision.
Well, then let's compare in the fact that we have a stacked house tonight here to fight for the chicken ordinance.
Well, it's not an open here, it's not open here.
It's
Yeah,
discussion.
Public hearing. It's
I
a
thought
work
it was a
session.
public hearing.
No?
No.
Work session, work session.
Okay, my mistake. Either way, how many people have been in here, David, demanding that you have an ordinance that allows them to have chickens?
We get inquiries,
How many?
or once or twice a year, we either get an inquiry and or a nuisance.
So in a city of 10,000 people, you have one or two asking every year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or a nuisance complaint about them.
So again, we go back to the needs of the few outweigh the needs of the many in this case.
So you get,
I would take issue with that statement because he just
Well,
said.
you only got two people asking a year. Why are we
No,
busting our butt
That's not what he
to
said.
have?
He said we
He
got
did
one or
say
two,
that.
we got one or two asking a year and one or two complaining a year. So
Well, then that cancels it out, I guess. Or
Right.
complaining that
So
somebody
the
has
argument of
chickens.
the wants of the many out meeting the
Okay.
wants of the few is invalid.
Okay, well, I'll just say this and leave it at this. I'm the only one here that's lived here when this town was considered rural.
So
It was a rural town. It was less than 1,000 people.
I'm not saying it wasn't, but I'm saying that's an offensive statement saying that I have less
Are you
interest
gonna
in
let
it.
me finish or are you gonna talk?
Not if you're gonna insult me.
I'm not insulting you. I just said I'm the only one that's lived here when it was a rural town. And that is a fact. And nobody had chickens in this town in Kearney when there was less than 1,000 people. They lived outside of town. There wasn't even an ordinance that I know of that you couldn't have chickens then. But now we have a nice town. We've got 10,000 people here. And if you want to take it back to a rural town and allow this, you're going to do it without my vote. And I'll say, I'll agree with you in one case, Wyatt. I agree with you on the acreage thing. I think they ought to have 3 acres. And that's why these 3-acre lots in the country and Paddock Drive and down here on Clear Creek were created so you could do those kind of things.
I could have horses too when it was originally.
You could.
Yeah.
That's actually part of the ordinance on Paddock Drive.
Yeah.
It was created as a horse community, if you didn't know that.
I'm aware.
Okay. So, again, it was created for a specific use.
Actually, the way that it was written, I could have 3 of any livestock.
And you got 3 acres and I'm all for that.
I could have had 3 cows.
Yeah, you probably could.
I can't now because that got taken out.
Okay.
But my point is I could have had 3 cows, but now I can't even have 3 chickens.
I'm all for it. 3 acres, you got 3 acres, have all the chickens you want. But
So,
that's,
So there's 18 of us that could have, well, not even 18 because all those lots are.
well, there's a few other 3-acre areas that have been taken into the city since then, but they weren't in the city when they were created, is my
Right.
point.
so I can have, if I have 3 acres, I can have, in your line of thinking, I can have chickens, but I put those chickens 20 feet away from my neighbor's house, and that's okay?
You wouldn't be 20 feet away from your house.
If my lot's 3 acres, it doesn't mean my neighbor's lot's 3 acres.
Well, it probably is.
You're making assumptions on everyone.
Well,
It's a broad assumption.
I'm
So-
just thinking of all
Black
the
and white.
3-acre subdivisions that we have, and I
Just saying.
can't think of any that,
Black and white,
That would be
as the
that.
ordinance reads, I have 3 acres, right? In your mind.
let's just say that that's the only way I'm voting for it, is if you're gonna make it 3 acres, and Wyeth's already said that half an acre is,
Yeah.
not good.
So,
And so you want to make it no acres restriction, so just leave it at that, I'm a no.
right. And to kind of address what I was saying earlier, just because I haven't lived here as long as you have, doesn't make any citizen that moves to the community has just as much invested right to make decisions as a community.
I will not vote for any ordinance that take this city backwards, and this does.
And I don't feel like this is taking it backwards. I think
Well, that's
this is
just a difference of opinion then.
All right, we'll agree to disagree. You know, we have to progress. The community is growing and it is changing, and there is no stopping that. An urban chicken ordinance is not taking it back. It's not something that's new. It's actually moving it forward. It's allowing people to sustain a healthier lifestyle. It's allowing them to produce their own food. You know, the argument of, well, dogs don't produce food is like saying, well, why should we have gardens then? Why not take that out? to the
There's
country?
plenty of acreage outside of town if they want to go out and buy some acreage,
Right.
and they can do whatever
So
they
I shouldn't
want.
have a backyard garden either? I should go out in the country to
I
farm?
don't think the garden doesn't create any waste, does it?
Yeah,
It smells?
it can. Have you ever smelled compost? You ever smelled rotting manure?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it
Oh,
can.
believe me.
Right, so I'm
Come
saying.
on now, you're
it's a-
just getting ridiculous here.
It's
Let's
a land use.
Let's focus on.
Let's just go on, Doyle, because we're not gonna agree.
I'm not agreeing. I'm just trying to counter all your points with counterpoints, right?
Yeah.
So, but we'll agree to disagree, and I'm not trying to change your opinion. I'm just trying to make my points because you made your points.
I've talked to probably 10 or 12 people, and not one person would be agreeable to, they don't want it and they don't want their neighbor to have it. I had 0 people say, I don't have a problem with it, I think it's great. So I did a sampling of people. Some obviously not in this town, but obviously live in other communities with the same issues. I've had nobody that would think it's a great idea.
So I'm still personally on the fence. I have friends in other communities that have chickens and love them and think they're great. I can tell you, if I came home tonight and told my husband, I was like, yeah, chickens, he'd be like, are you kidding me? I do not want them next door. When I walk out, I don't want chickens. I get it. But I do think what I can hear very clearly is we don't like the ordinance as it is. We want it to be 4 to 6 chickens, maybe 6 chickens. I think if you push it higher than that, you're going to lose some of us that are on the fence for sure. And I would actually say, I haven't decided in my opinion one way or the other, but I don't have to do that tonight. But I would say the acreage thing to me isn't as big of a deal as if you can meet the setbacks, then fine. Like, it doesn't, to me, have to be a half acre. So I don't know if we rework the ordinance so it for sure gets the minimum that the pro-chicken, for lack of a better word. People more in favor of it, have it where they want it, and then we can go from there. Because right now, it's not enough for the people that want chickens, for sure. Then you've got me, who's on a fence and haven't decided one way or the other. Then we've got the people who are for sure not going to vote for chickens. And the one thing I that's really holding me up is I really want to hear from the public. I mean, you're only getting so many calls because, one, some people are just having chickens regardless and not saying anything. Some people aren't asking at all. Some people are complaining because someone has chickens and they know they're not supposed to. You're just not hearing from a lot of people. There's a whole bunch of people who are probably apathetic about it. Like, I don't care if people have chickens. We're not going to hear from those people. You just don't hear. You hear from the unhappy people and the happy people, and nobody else wants to talk to us, and that's fine. So my recommendation, or what I would suggest, is that we revise it, the ordinance, proposed ordinance, so it's something that people can vote on, that meets at least the minimum standard for the people that are in favor of chickens, and then next, we do the public hearing, and then we vote it one way or the other. It gets it out of limbo.
Let me
Move
ask one
forward.
more question, and you brought up enforcement, and you asked David if they had enforcement, and you said the animal control officers would take care of that. And I remember several meetings ago, Wyatt, you said you knew of people that had chickens already in town,
Certainly.
and there is no allowance for that in town now.
Right,
And
right.
so how many of your,
We've not,
enforcement.
nobody's contacted us and let us know where they're at. If we knew where they were at, then we would treat it like a
and so when
code issue.
you cruise the streets and the other officers see that and report it, or they don't? They don't?
If they don't, yeah, if they don't see it,
And what is
I
your-
don't know, I can't tell
So,
you.
do you have one guy that's in animal control, that's all he does?
Animal control / code enforcement, Sandy Batesel.
And so what do they do all day if,
Respond to complaints, and if she goes and sees it something else, she responds to that as well.
but they're not
Yeah, people that,
proactively looking for that?
yeah, the people that have chickens, we don't necessarily know they're there because they're in backyards and they're not easy to see.
All I'm saying is that the ordinance is not being enforced now, and even when.
I would say that it is being enforced now, and if people have chickens, it's because we don't know about them and no one's let us know.
I guess
How
we
many
don't
have you
know.
removed?
Hmm?
How many have you removed,
But
or do you know?
we don't do it all the time because we don't
Ever?
know. Yes, we have. Yeah, I have.
So I guess to that point, if we know there's chickens out there, but we're not getting complaints, there must not be an issue then.
Well, that's your way of looking at it. Well, there's other people that are like Paula, and they just don't say anything.
Well, I mean, I
What you're
would.
saying is there's people that are apathetic
Sure.
and they just don't say anything.
Then it's not
Well,
an
because
issue.
it's not an issue for them, right? Or they don't know. I mean, there's a lot, I mean, just sort of, well, there's a lot of people that don't even understand how to contact City Hall. That's just, it's easy to take that for granted as people that are clearly civically engaged, but a lot of people aren't and don't even have the mechanisms and tools to do those things. I honestly can see the argument both ways, which is part of why I'm on the fence. I have concerns about the staffing ability to properly enforce if we open up something and then there are more chickens, and will people follow?
And I would say that should not be a concern of the board because we have a person and we'll be able to do the.
Yeah.
I have a question. If a neighbor has chickens and the next door neighbor has dogs, and the dogs don't like the chicken, and there's a nuisance, which one is the nuisance?
Probably the barking dog, right?
Well, I would say currently it'd be the chicken because chickens aren't allowed.
Right.
But
If this
were
goes
to go-
through, they're on a half-acre lot, they met their setbacks, and the next door neighbor dog,
Be the barking dog.
It would
because
then be, yeah, I would
Always
say
issue.
probably then be the barking dog.
It'd be no different than if your neighbor's
File it,
dog
yeah.
didn't like my dog.
Now would require a noise complaint be filed.
right? So now what does the
With the
city
police
do?
department.
Remove the dog?
And that would probably be up
Remove
to
the
the judge
domestic
to
dog
say,
for a
here's
piece of
here's how
livestock.
you need to address the barking dog.
Yeah. That'd be a tough one to sell.
if the dog's barking at a cat, the dog's barking at another dog. You see, I'm basing it on, my thought on, again, land use, not distinguishing the, splitting hairs between the type of animal. An animal's an animal.
I'm not talking land use, I'm talking code enforcement and nuisance. It has nothing to do with the land use, it has to do with two neighbors that have a problem. And our solution is to remove the dog. I think that's wrong.
I don't know that we would remove the dog, we just have.
Remove the dog from the situation.
Well,
I mean, that's just good dog ownership. I'm not gonna let my dog out in my backyard and just.
One of my dog, when he goes out, and he has to go out,
Oh, yeah.
and it's, but my neighbor has, because this is what will happen, just so you know, I have little yappers. They will bark at that chicken coop every single time they go out. Now, they bark when the neighbor dogs are out, but the neighbor dogs aren't out all the time, so it's not, there's barking. If it's late at night, I'm like, get back in here right now. But if there's a chicken coop and it is always out there and my dog is always barking, then what do? I don't get to let my dog out in the backyard anymore. And maybe that's not something I should be concerned about, but these are the sort of concerns that people have.
This is what we'll face.
Yeah, these are the
And
things that people raise.
It's a valid concern. I do say, that's something we have to take into consideration, but I do like, and I said last time, let's take it out to the public. The public, and it obviously not official, but I see quite a bit on Facebook and different places. Hey, can we have chickens? Why can't we have chickens? So I think a good public outreach and having a public hearing and let them have their input
Right.
is where we need to go with it. And I said that last time, so.
Well, we've talked on this for half an hour, so I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend to the Board of Aldermen that we don't change anything in our restrictions and leave everything as is.
I'll second that.
And to clarify that, so the amendment 405-180 is,
well, he's saying not make any change to the.
I'm saying not make any changes, we leave everything the way it is, and we're
Okay.
not changing anything. That's our that's what we're looking for, is a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen, right?
From the board, yeah.
okay,
That's what they asked for, is they sent it back to
Well-
us.
Yes.
We had a meeting back in July, and the P and Z did not like the language in this ordinance, the way it was written, and sent a recommendation to the Board of Aldermen that they not approve the ordinance.
Yeah, and so I'm making a motion that we don't enact an ordinance and
Okay.
leave things as are.
okay, thanks for clarifying.
Okay, but now I'm confused. Not enact this ordinance or not recommend this ordinance and leave it prohibited, or move this ordinance forward with a recommendation?
We're not moving anything forward. I recommended that we don't change any of our codes at all. I think that's what I said, I'm not sure. You got that?
Don't change
And that's what
anything.
Chasten seconded.
Okay.
All right, that clarifies for me. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of that motion? Aye. All those opposed?
Okay. So it dies for a tie?
Well, I can make another motion, right? Or is that it?
Yeah, that one, so that one would die, so now it's
Right.
another motion.
I guess I'm just gonna make a motion, what I suggest. I make a motion that we revise the current ordinance so it takes into account,
Can I help?
yes, go for
Make a
it.
motion to revise the current ordinance, removing the 1 acre or half acre limit and increasing the number of chickens to 6, and bring it forward for a public hearing at the next P and Z meeting.
And all we're doing by this motion is saying, let's make these changes and bring it up again. We're not approving it, we're just saying, this is what we want the next steps to be, right?
And we want to hear from the public.
We want to hear from the public. Okay, I second that motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye.
So now what do we do?
I think we probably need to report to the Board of Aldermen that the planning and zoning did not make a decision either way.
Yeah, tell them to quit
Because they
shoving their
did, because
stuff down on us.
because the Board of Aldermen did remand, the Board of Aldermen did say basically, if you don't like the way the ordinance is written, if you'd like to make changes
Right,
and then send back up to us a recommendation, please do that. There's not a recommendation, so we report back to the Board of Aldermen that there was not a recommendation that came from planning and zoning.
sure.
So I guess if we left the language as is and moved for a public hearing, would anybody vote for it then?
We'll be voting for the public hearing and the,
If the Board of Aldermen want to have a public hearing, let them have it.
It's an ordinance change. Do we just require public hearing for ordinance changes at city council or both city council and planning commission?
We had a public hearing here back in July, the original time.
Okay,
It went to the Board of Aldermen, they held a public hearing.
okay,
And
so
then
we've already
handed back to us. So,
accomplished.
yeah, we've kind of done that already.
I think there was as many people here then as there was
yeah,
now, too. So
yep. Yeah, nobody came to talk about
there
chicken.
wasn't anybody here
Was there any-
to support or be against.
Is there any outreach during those public hearings or just the standard
Our
publish it?
standard, it'd be our standard postings.
And those are?
We post in the newspaper, agendas get posted on social media, and on the city website.
Okay,
I hate to send something without like any actual action on anything. Because it makes this body seem like they asked us to do a job, make a recommendation, now we're sending something without a recommendation. I just don't like that.
We had some action. We had 2 different votes taken, and
At the end of the day, no action.
then they can take that.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And
Take that
it
as-
wasn't,
It's not an affirmative
It wasn't
action.
original, yeah, there
It's
wasn't.
not an
original
affirmative action, and that's where I struggle.
okay, let's move on to old business. Dave, you got anything else to add to
No, sir.
item 5? Okay. Monthly information items, enclosures and monthly permits.
Hello.
Anything new coming this year that's of note? Any plans?
We'll have a meeting next month, and there'll be a couple items.
Okay. All right. I guess I see what you're saying. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?